Hey guys, I want to make you aware of a brief disclaimer before we start this series on mental health in the church that the opinions and the views expressed in these episodes are merely the opinions of those of myself and our guests, and they do not necessarily collaborate with the opinions and views of Hope City Church, Edmonton. So thanks so much for keeping that in mind as you watch these episodes. Take care. Hey guys, welcome back to the Hope City podcast. I'm your host, Justin. I work on the creative team here at Hope City Church, and we are continuing our series today on mental health in the church, and we're discussing the topics of overcoming fear and worry, and also talking about FOMO. So I have the pleasure of introducing my friend Paul Woida, who's a recording artist who's traveled the world internationally performing all over at festivals and conferences. Paul, welcome to the show, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, me and Justin, we go back, a few years now. Justin's been there since the beginning, following me on the road and making videos for me. I've been writing and recording a lot, working in Nashville. I've been full-time musician for the last few years, and I've got a huge show at the Wind Spear that I'm selling. It's big. It's the most busy time of my life right now.
So I can only imagine, Paul, with that busyness of trying to sell like hundreds of tickets for that show, well, thousands of tickets almost, and the pressures of, recording, working on your voice, working on your music and all that stuff, like finding balance in that must be a little bit of a mental health struggle. So tell us a little bit about, for those who don't know you, what do you struggle with on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I'm a really emotional person. So I feel really deeply. When I'm super high and good and happy, I'm like, and when I'm low, I'm low. And so with my life, all the things that I deal with, the highs and the lows, I deal with anxiety 100%, even depression, and more anxiety these days though. A couple of years it was more depression, but
So what do you feel is like the root cause? Like we've talked about like the symptoms of anxiety and what that looks like with some previous guests, but what do you think is kind of a root cause behind anxiety in your life?
It's fear of the future. I heard a quote once: if you want depression, dwell on the past.
Yeah.
If you want anxiety, dwell on the future. And if you want peace, be in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's actually, I've been really trying to be more in the moment, honestly.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I've been working on. Yeah.
That's so good, man. Can you think back to a particular time where anxiety started, where fear like really started to call the shots in your life?
Yeah, I remember it very well. It was a couple of years ago, and it was a perfect storm of so many things. My faith in Jesus and the gospel is my foundation of my life, and that was getting chipped away at little by little by, I was in a little bit of an unhealthy church situation, and I was talking to good friends about, deep theological issues, and they were opening my mind and making me just kind of realize I don't know anything. And then with all that, there was this girl that came into my life who was not good news for me and broke my heart. And that's when it's always the girls who do it and broke my heart. And that was depression and anxiety. The 2016 worst year of my life. I didn't know places so dark and awful and painful existed. And that was the start of it. And I still feel the effects of it.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, like sometimes that struggle and that pain of, a broken relationship or things like that are just so hard on you, and it doesn't...
Especially when the foundation of your life has been compromised. You don't see how strong the foundation of your life is until what's above it crumbles. And then when you're falling on something, Yeah.
And I think so many people watching today can relate to just the rawness and the realness of life. Because people see the Instagram stories, they see the updates, they see the hundreds of likes. You've got thousands of, close to 100,000 followers on social media and stuff. And I can only imagine the the fear of missing out that people experience? Like, oh, I wish I was like Paul, or Paul being like, I wish I was like this person, or I wish my career was at this point and stuff. And there's so many of those fears and those irrational like fears of the future about all the what ifs surrounding that. So how do you deal with like the fear of missing out in pursuing your music career?
I feel that every day, in every way you can imagine. I don't know if there's an easy way to deal with things. Like, there are certain things that are very real to humans. Things like, it's true that to a degree, we only have a certain amount of time to live, and we can't really experience everything. So even that in itself, like, everyone is missing out on something. Yeah. And for me, the way I deal with this stuff is every day I try to make sure through just seeking God that I'm on the path He wants for me. Because if I know I'm on His path, I have honest faith that I'm not missing out on anything because I don't trust necessarily. As I get older, I learn to not trust as much what I want. Because too many times I've wanted something and gotten it, and it been not what I wanted.
How have you navigated the mental prisons and like the thoughts that come in and the worries about the future?
I had a really good friend say to me, it's easier to love God than to trust Him. And it's so true. It's easier to love Him than to trust Him. And what I mean is, like, so many times I feel Him leading me somewhere that I just don't want to go. At least my flesh doesn't want it. And it just comes down to, do you trust Him? Do you trust that He's not leading you to death? Do you trust, like bad death? There's good death. Do you trust that He's a good Father? Do you trust that He wants to bring you life and fullness? Because one of the hugest lies is we feel like He's robbing us of an experience of being human, but it couldn't be more the opposite. Like John 10:10. I came to give you life and life in the full.
Yeah.
Who has come to rob you and to kill and destroy? And whenever I feel like He's like pursuing God, whenever it feels like He's robbing me, it's not. I can't tell you how many times I've just been obedient and done something I didn't want to do, and the life and the fullness that's come out of it, the freedom and the peace and the joy. And
so yeah, Paul, in a world saturated by sexuality and in the music industry and all that kind of stuff, and that image and that lust for fame and fortune and stuff, how do you navigate that as a recording artist who's actually transitioning into the Christian field?
The two main things, and I think most guys can, that most guys can really, really relate to. One of the main things that I feel like I'm missing out, that I if I'm not careful, I could really destroy my life in two main ways. The first way is there's this thing in me that's like, pursue your dreams at no matter the cost. If anyone gets in the way, leave them. And then there's this other thing in me that is just as strong. That's like, put others above yourself. No matter the cost. Put others above yourself. And those things are super conflicting, because the thing about God is He's outside of time. I am restricted to this. I can only see this far. So if I'm pursuing my dream, and 30 years, I can't see 30 years down, and I'm lonely because I sacrificed people, that is terrifying to me. Yeah. Sexuality is a huge one. like trusting that God's way is right, especially when it comes to sexuality, being with like abstaining, I feel like in my mind, God, you're robbing me. You're robbing me of an experience. You're not leading me to life and joy. But so many people I meet who are really, really promiscuous it breaks them. And they're longing for the way God says it should be, the one person and the connection. And so I feel like I'm missing out.
Yeah.
But I don't trust myself. It's pretty complicated.
Jesus talks a lot about, don't worry about tomorrow because today has enough trouble of its own. So how do you avoid worrying about, the next 24 hours from now?
So good.
And what do you turn to?
So good.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing for me. Ever since I was little, I've been a day ahead, a step ahead. I've never been in the moment. Yeah. And you have to literally train your mind to do it. Like meditate. And when your thoughts start doing this, to learn to flex the muscle of pulling those thoughts back, you're training your mind. And it's such a virtue in every way. Like in your work ethic, if you're really working on something, all the successful people work on one thing at a time, and that one thing has their focus. And then the next thing, all their focus. They're not doing 3 things at once. It's not as effective. So it's actually blows my mind how so many of God's just rules and commands are actually so fundamental in so many successful people. Whether they...
Because if we can find a way to make God the focus, what our default focus when we need to take captive our thoughts, the Bible talks about that, right? To submit our thoughts to Jesus' lordship and stuff. And, what does that look like for you? You write songs that, talk about anxiety, like your recent single, All the Lights, talks about overcoming anxiety. Could you talk a little bit about just that process for you? And maybe it's like a healing path for you is like finding that, that struggling with those emotions and stuff and realizing that you can just be honest and write it down and write a song about it and help other people. Tell us a little bit about that process for you.
Well, that one I wrote in Nashville with like one of the craziest writers in the industry, the humblest guy. He was a worship leader for years. I basically said to the room, I was with a writer and a producer, and I basically was like, man, I deal with anxiety, like especially going into this new situation with these in Nashville. I felt like out of my league, and as soon as I said that, the writer was like, "So do I." And then the producer was like, "So do I." And that's happened every room I've gone in. I think it's a musician thing. Like the music industry is like breeds anxiety. And so, and basically, it started from there, and it's just like how anxiety is this dark blackness inside your heart. And when God comes in, he just lights it up. So it's like all the lights came on in my heart, and it's just kind of simple, and that's how it happened. Yeah,
that's cool. So how have you felt that like sharing your story through songs help people around you and helped you deal with it too?
It's the reason I'm in music.
Yeah.
When I have people message me saying like this song saved my life, that's happened to me. I've had people say this song got me through the hardest time of my life.
Yeah, that's so good.
It's such an honor.
Yeah,
it's such an honor.
So Paul, we've been talking a lot about anxiety, about overcoming fear and like pursuing a dream, FOMO. So we're going to wrap things up here in a sec. I want to just encapsulate, what are a few tips you would give to somebody who's dealing with anxiety and worry and fear?
Yes. So the number one thing for me as a believer is my identity and my hope has to be rooted in Christ and the gospel, what he's done for me, because that is immovable and unshakable. That's going nowhere, and it empowers me. Yeah. That is everything. Now, if you're not a believer, there are other things that you can do that are very practical. The number one would be people. I cannot do it on my own. Yeah. I have people I can call that I trust, I can be super honest with. That's huge. And then other simple things. And you hear this everywhere, and it's so true. Exercise. Make exercise a priority. Yeah. Eating well. That is so huge. Drinking water, clearing your mind. Yeah. And then even reading. For me, reading's huge. And I'm not a reader. I hate reading. And it's hard. It's a struggle for me. But if I don't do those things, it literally feels like I'm sinking and drowning. Yeah.
Well, Paul, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and I hear it's your first podcast interview, so that's pretty big honor to do that with you. So be sure to tune in next week, and we will see you guys soon.